Can you hear us?
Is that better?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I always forget to unmute the mics. Okay, so PG 1801. So this was a grant that was approved earlier this year for $752. That was the 50% of the project cost of the estimate. And the project has been completed. The applicant submitted a receipt and this photo showing the work done, and requested additional funding because the cost ended up a little higher than originally planned. So the 50% of the final cost is about $859 because the request was less than 1,000. I figured the board would entertain that request. And we do have, just to give you an update on the grant finances, we've got $5,000 per year, $10,000 per biennium. Right now, what we've, including today, the requests on today's agenda, if those were approved, we would still have $2,900 remaining until June 30th of 2019. That being said, there is one grant that was approved earlier this year that I think is being canceled, but I think that they're not going to do the work. And so I think we'll probably end up seeing another $1,000 available. So that would be almost 4,000 remaining with the request for this grant and the request on today's agenda. And so unless the board has any other questions, that's all I have to say about this one request.
Okay. So I'm looking back at the request is to replace the porch top, the porch decking. And the project is complete now?
It's complete, yes. This is the photo of the completed work, and the total ended up higher than planned, and so the 50% match now would be, if approved, would be $859.50.
Got it.
Up from $752.
I would entertain a motion to approve that increase.
I'll move to approve the modification to PG 1801 preservation grant.
I'll second that.
Chair Basinger, or you want to be last? Sorry.
Poll the
Yes.
the members.
Mr. Blythe,
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Aye.
and Chair Basinger.
Aye. Let's keep moving here. That is approved. And next item on the agenda is preservation grant for 1602 17th Street. That is PG 1804. And we'll go back to Kelly for a commission report.
Thank you. This slide says 1803. That's just a mistake. It is 1804.
Oh, yeah.
So
Wrong line.
I think,
We skipped
maybe
one.
it is 1803. Yeah, it's 1803. This is at 810 Jefferson Street. This is a designated structure in the McLaughlin district. The grant application is for chimney repair, and as you can see in the photos, the chimney is it's a prominent element of the structure, and it's mentioned in the inventory form for the structure. The home is located on Jefferson Street between 8th and 9th. And the applicant submitted 2 bids. The grant request is for $1,000 for a project that is well over well over $2,000, so it's not a 50-50 match, it's less than that. And so they're requesting $1,000, which is the maximum allowed for a first grant request. And staff, chimney repair qualifies as a grant in the preservation grant program. It's a repair of historic element of the home. And so staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Is the applicant here, and do you wish to speak about it in any way?
Only if you have questions.
Do we have questions?
No, I don't.
I have no questions. If I may interpret the lack of questions, does that mean that we are in accord regarding staff recommendation that we approve the grant?
Sure.
And if so, may we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Preservation Grant 18-03, 810 Jefferson Street, approval for a $1,000 grant for chimney repair on the Morris Holman house located at 810 Jefferson Street.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Blythe,
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Aye.
and Chair Basinger.
Aye. And with that, PC 18-12 is approved, and we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which doesn't come up on my screen.
3C?
Yeah, there it is. PC 18-125, Preservation Grant for 1602 17th Street. This time is for real storm windows. So may we have commission report?
Yes, and just for the benefit of the people in the audience here, I just want to explain these grants are awarded on a reimbursement basis. So once approved by the board, you can go ahead and have the work done and then work with staff, myself, to show that that work has been completed, turn in receipts, and then request a reimbursement. We'll cut a check to you after that. So, and I will also provide you with a little sign that you can put up on your property while the work's being done to just say that this was part of our grant program. Okay, so PG 1804, this request is for storm windows. This is a designated structure, landmark outside of our the McLaughlin or Kenema districts. And the home has the original wood windows. The applicant is requesting the grant to fund wood storm windows to cover those on the outside of the wood historic window. The total cost is just over $800. For storm windows, we don't match 50-50, we do a 25%. And so 25% of their cost is $207.75. And staff recommends approval.
Very good. Is the applicant here?
Were they the ones that were out of town? I think.
Yes, they did, yeah. They did say that.
Okay, well,
Nothing like having a vent pipe out your window. Goodness.
given that the grant program has always placed emphasis on windows, although not storm windows, I think
Actually, we do talk about storm windows. It's a good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
good thing.
Encourage it.
Well, my inclination, of course, is to approve that.
Yeah. Can we make a motion? Should we make?
And if there's no discussion, I would entertain a motion.
All right, I move to approve PG 1804 Preservation Grant for storm windows at 1602 17th Street.
I would second that. Is it 1804 or 1805?
It's 1804.
1804.
Grant.
So in the staff report, it shows 1805. Okay,
It shows, yeah, I guess it shows
right there, and then I see right here,
Yeah.
two different numbers. Well, I would second that, whichever one's right.
Okay, Mr. Blythe,
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Aye,
Chair Basinger.
Aye.
yeah, it's got two different.
And that preservation grant is approved. Item number 4 on the agenda is design advice, PC 18-127, design advice for solar panels on historic site in the McLaughlin Conservation District, 301 Madison Street. Commission report.
Okay. This request, well, so this is design advice is non-binding. The historic review board members are encouraged to give individual feedback, but not feedback as a group, to the applicants. And, the discussion and the proposal here, materials turned in, it will become part of the public record if the applicant ends up submitting an application to the board for approval. The staff recommended that the applicant come for design advice here for these solar panels due to the placement of them. In the past, the staff has approved and the board has concurred with solar panels on designated structures when they're not on a street-facing roof face. So on the side or on the back. In this case, the home, kind of the corner here at 3rd and Madison, the entrance is on the corner. So the front of the house is on that corner, and that's the southeast corner, I believe. And so it's the best solar exposure, I would imagine. And so all the panels that are shown in the drawings here are street facing. So this house, faces both 3rd Street and Madison. And so the guidelines, now these are guidelines for new construction. This is a historic home, so, we're kind of not, I'm using the new construction guidelines kind of when I'm talking about this, but they talk about equipment and technology and that they should be not placed in prominent locations. And so I didn't want to give any sort of guidance at a staff level without the board really looking at this to see how it felt about that guideline and this proposal. And I think the applicant's here and can answer questions as well.
Yeah.
Very good. I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward then. And please begin by stating your name
Yeah,
for the record.
So my name's Matt. I'm from Arc Solar.
That's,
Do you want me to sit? Sure. And then the homeowners are here as well. But yeah, they asked me to speak. So we really reached out just to seek design advice because of the nature of it being on the corner. There certainly are more spaces that we can place panels, but we've included the P1, which is just panel 1, in the areas that would get the best sunlight. But we're certainly open to advice of, how you guys would see the panels best being placed.
on another house?
We can talk to the homeowners about that.
Yeah, I drove by it today. It's a very prominent house. It's a very beautiful house.
It is. They've done a lot of work to it.
Oh, it's
moving in.
It's amazing. It's gorgeous. I know in the past when we've dealt with solar, and this has come up, it's always seems to be the places where you need it the most, but are the least appropriate, and that's the case here. I mean, when I look at it, I'm not speaking for the board, but I would be inclined that every place you want it is not appropriate. The only places, and typically that we've done in the past, is the places you don't want it on that back corner, but that's not really where the sun is. But it being on a corner, it's very prevalent, and every view is very predominant. And so with those being there, especially with this house, from my perspective, it's a bit of a distraction. I look at it as not being very appropriate because of the historic nature of the house. But that's just me. And we've had the same thing come up many years ago, and there are some guidelines for solar, and it's typically where it's not visible, but sometimes that doesn't work so well with the sun. But that's me. It's a beautiful house. So anyway, that's my 10 cents.
So we did include a picture with one of our panels on the roof, just so you
Yeah.
can sort of see
They're black.
what it would look like. So they don't look like your traditional solar panel with the diamond grid lines and the silver and black or silver and blue. It's a much nicer look.
Oh no, they're nice panels. It's just a matter of what's appropriate for the house.
Yeah.
But I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah, I'm kind of conflicted too, in that I don't like to interfere with things like this.
It's hard.
But we haven't established a precedent. In the past, we have approved panels, but generally they've been on the back or they've been perpendicular if it was a gable end, that was the front of the home.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a direct facing, straight on view of them from the front entrance.
The hard part is it's on a corner. Everything's visible.
Yeah.
Is it, it's a big lot. Is it practical or possible to find a different place on the property other than the roof of the house?
Do you know what the city's setback requirements are from posting on a new structure or additional structure?
Actually, if it was something like that, that would not be a permanent structure. Like doing a solar panel array on some sort of a framework. I think it would,
When we do
Don't know.
ground mounted units, they typically have to meet setback requirements in most
yeah, that I don't know.
municipalities, but
Is the garage in shade? I don't remember if it is.
I believe so.
It's back
Garage,
yeah.
away.
garage is at the very
Okay.
back corner
Yep.
in the heaviest of the trees.
It's that cutoff thing.
And so, we can certainly deal with the sun rating part of it. We're more just kind of seeking that design advice for where you guys would be the most likely to approve the panel. So it doesn't necessarily have to be where we've placed those panels in P1. We're more just interested in, what the board would say the best place for the panels would be in terms of most likely for approval.
Well,
The 3 panels on the rear wing of the house appear to me to be about the only ones that would not be readily visible
You talking these
from the
ones?
streets.
Because here's 3rd and Madison. You can see these
Oh.
very well,
Oh.
even more so because they're lower.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I had to go out and check the siding on that for the
yeah, if
plan.
you go
I
drive
was
down there, it's-
disoriented, forget what I
Right.
said.
That's why I couldn't tell until I got there how it was sited.
And I guess what I was referring to, if there were spaces that you guys felt like the panels would be better from a design advice perspective, but are shown as blank on there now, those are certainly usable spaces.
It's
We
really-
listed the spaces with
No,
the
I
best
totally
on
get it.
there.
From where I'm at, it's really the back unvisible part of the street. It's, yeah, right there. And that's probably not your optimum sun area. And I totally get that. I'm all about how do you make it work. It's just, and I'm not going off the cuff. It's just kind of my gut. That's what, when I went out and looked at it and stood there and then kind of drove around and looked, and everything's so dominant, the whole corner. Even if you were to, go to the other side of the front entrance, it's still visible. back that whole line around, except for the back corners. But again, it's a thought, it's a suggestion as far as garage as well. I see that big tree. The house gets the sun all day long. So I don't know. But again, I'm not speaking for everybody else.
That's why we're here.
And it's not what you probably, it's not really what I want to say. It's just what I feel like that's, when I look at it, I'm all about how do you make, get off the grid.
The two accessory structures behind the house, I can see the greenhouse in the corner here. And then there's another small structure back there hidden from view.
Yeah.
Do they present any kind of an opportunity for exposure?
Um,
I mean, putting solar panels on top of a greenhouse kind of defeats the greenhouse. I
Right.
understand that. But
That tree could come out.
talking about locations.
Yeah, the greenhouse probably wouldn't be a usable structure just with the weight of
This guy and
panels.
that guy.
And then beyond that, it's really just that large tree that's there.
All shade.
Yeah, if the tree were not there, then possibly, but that's sort of a challenge as well. Not an impossible one, but self-defeating a little bit maybe.
You know, there may come a time when because of energy shortages or future needs, when the city code has to be rewritten to better accommodate solar panels, but as it stands right now, I don't think we can let this one go through with the panels where they're shown here, and I would really look for some alternative place.
And again, we're not seeking approval today, just
No.
design advice. So if your
No, that's
design
the
advice
advice.
is the back of the house, then we can talk about those, or the additional structures. We can talk about those. We're just really trying to get the advice part first.
It's a possibility with the outbuildings. Yeah, that would be more appropriate. So. That's it for me.
That's all I've got.
Yeah, that's it.
Nothing to add, really.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sometimes the touch screen works and sometimes it doesn't. Item number 5 on the agenda, PC 18-128. Seeking staff concurrence on a steel fence on a historic site in the McLaughlin District at 1817 12th Street. And we have a commission report on that.
Thank you, Chair Basinger. This proposal comes from the Oregon City School District regarding the Barclay School, which is a designated structure in the McLaughlin District. This, as you can see in the existing photo, there's a chain link fence that comes out from the front building line along 12th Avenue. And the school district would like to replace that fence with a steel fence, as shown in the photo on the right. So normally if a fence meets the HRB policy, staff can approve it without having to go to the Historic Review Board. In this case, staff made a call that the proposal was so similar to the policies that approval was warranted, but wanted to come to the board for concurrence. And then kind of, future, for future applicants to know that if the board agrees or not. So if the board doesn't agree, then staff's approval would be voided. And so the current HRB fence policy allows wrought iron. I think I might have accidentally put cast iron on one of the staff reports, but wrought iron fences are permitted in front and side yards. And this is black, coated steel. And the HRB policy is silent on any other type of metal except for wrought iron. So if the board agrees that the steel fence, the style is close enough or similar enough to wrought iron, then the staff approval can stand.
Okay. Has there been any input from McLaughlin neighborhood on this?
No, we haven't heard anything, and this was not publicly noticed, right? Because it's a staff level decision.
Got it.
So if the board disagrees with staff, then the applicant would potentially be able to come back with a publicly noticed application to the board and have a public hearing.
So, okay. I had a question. Can I ask a question? So I was just curious, the fence where it's at now, isn't where they're going to keep it? Like on Madison, it's on the, on the property line, and then this one sets, will this one come around on the property line?
Yeah, so this one.
That's where I was confused when I was reading when he was saying where it was going.
My understanding is that it starts at the corner here and comes out, and then there's an opening for the driveway, and then it would come along the property line here back to the back corner.
So
And
they're not doing Madison.
that's not my understanding. And if they wanted to, then that would be a separate, that might be a separate application.
Yeah, 'cause-
But the approval tonight would just be for.
Just that short section, because there's chain link everywhere.
Right,
And
yes, there is.
so this one's kind of cattywampus but they're going to straighten out and do something with a gate thing like they kind of have. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Anything's better than what's there. For sure. But that would be the master plan. If they got that fenced, then they'd eventually make its way around the
I'm not
property.
sure. I'm not sure if they are planning on keeping any fence at all on the other side. I think the reason for this one, partial reason is that they need to move the chain link fence because it's not actually on the property line, and the city owns the park next door, and so I think they want to really get that fence line in the right spot.
And now, is a vote required on this for concurrence?
I believe so. Yes.
In that case, I would be seeking a motion.
Where is it? For PC 18-128. So I can make a motion to approve for staff concurrence, PC 18-128, steel fence on a historic site in McLaughlin Conservation District at 817 12th Street.
Second.
Mr. Blythe?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Chair Basinger?
Aye.
Sweet.
And with that, it carries. I'll ask a question of staff here at this point. Are we prepared to move into public hearing?
We did get a request for a comment not on the agenda, for item not
Okay.
on the agenda. If you want to entertain that now, I think the person wasn't here at the beginning of
That'd
the
be
meeting.
fine, yeah. All right, Patty Webb.
Hello, I'm Patty Webb from Kenema. I basically just had a statement. It's not on anything that's going on tonight. But when I've attended these meetings, I've noticed that there is a tendency to allow non-conforming features such as sunroofs, French doors, inappropriate siding, decks, windows on the back side or on the sides with the remark, well, you can't really see it from the front. but you must assume that anybody that lives in Kanema and McLaughlin, or any of the neighborhoods really, is living there because they appreciate the historic qualities of the neighborhood. And when they come over, they have friends over, they like to take them out and show them their property and say, look, the property next door, we're all historic and we've been here since such and such. And that's kind of interrupted by the presence of the features that I mentioned. And I guess I just like to have a little more consideration shown to the people that live behind and on the sides, and not have them spoken of as just not mattering, basically, because several times I've heard you say, well, you can do it, it's on the back or it's on the side, so it doesn't really matter. But if it has to be hidden by shrubbery or fencing, then it probably shouldn't be there. And it's still, if it needs to be hidden, then it needs to be hidden for a reason. So I just was hoping that maybe you could consider that when you make your decisions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments are duly noted. So the question is, do we proceed now with the public hearing, or do we break? Do we need to break? I'm fully prepared to push forward if...
Sure.
Yep, rock and roll.
Okay. The next item is PC, no, that's not true. Okay, roll down. Okay, it is PC 18-122, HR 18-11, review of new home design with detached garage and accessory dwelling in the Kanema National Register District at 5th and Apperson Street. Now, because this is a public hearing, I will now read the exciting process describing quasi-judicial hearing processes. One public hearing on land use application is scheduled for tonight. A staff report has been prepared for that application and has been made available to the public 7 days before this hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to the applicant's proposal. The staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and by the Oregon City Municipal Court, and the procedure is shown on the chart over there on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written materials while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed on the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentation, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the public record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to city staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both, without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all other parties can respond to. The issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of any applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proper conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. So now we will open the record for file number PC 122 HR 1811.
Can I have a question?
We haven't done it yet.
Ethics.
When we get there.
Thank you.
So I was going to ask Ms. Richter to poll the members regarding conflicts of interests or biases.
Okay, so you all know the sort of question is, does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflict of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare? I did watch the design advice hearing from the last commission meeting or HRB meeting, and I did, Chair Basinger did make some disclosures, but I think it's important for the public record that we do it again, because this is the first initial public hearing on this request. So I'm going to ask you about any ex parte contacts, would be contacts with the applicant since the application was filed.
Okay, I am a licensed real estate broker in Oregon, and in that capacity, I assist buyers and sellers of residential property throughout this area, including some in Kenema and the Claflin District. The property under review is not for sale, and as a result, there is no conflict of interest therein. While I do have expertise in market values in this area, any decision I make will be based exclusively on applicable approval criteria. In the case of this property, at the time the applicants purchased it, I represented the seller of the property. The buyers were not represented in that transaction, and as a result, I had some contact with them at that time. I have had no contact with them outside this room at the last hearing and the design advice 2 sessions. I've had no other contact with them.
Have you had any discussions about what they could build?
No.
Have you been to neighborhood association meetings where this application was discussed?
No. I am the chair of the Kenema Neighborhood Association, and this item has not been brought up for discussion at the meetings.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have anything else to add? Board members have anything else to add? Site visits.
Yeah,
Yes.
All of you have visited the site.
a while ago, yes.
I'm assuming there were no conversations on the site. You just visited the site.
Drove by.
Okay, does anyone in the audience wish to question the commissioners about these disclosures? Come on up. State your name for the record before you start.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Paul Edgar. I'm from Oregon City, Kenema area. What I'm concerned about is what I understand is the second property sold or represented by Mr. Basinger in this area, including what was the cottage home areas.
I'll correct you on that. I have had no involvement whatsoever
You have no
with the
involvement with cottage home?
None at all.
Okay.
Ever.
Fine. The question really comes along, if there's a continuance of of the part of selling property and then representing the properties being sold in Kenema. And when I talked to the ethics board, they told me that any time that there is a continuance of these types of activities, what it does is then it displays a position that they considered is adjudicatable. And that's the way they explained it. It's when a realtor is making money, selling properties and then acting on it, and then part of issuing a statement of appropriateness so that somebody can build or do something, then this then becomes a kind of like an official act, but it's when you do more than one. Because in just this one, we get into a situation. So what we're trying to do is identify if in fact that there are others and where he's been selling property.
Paul,
Okay.
what are you after? I'm just, from
what
my perspective, what are you after?
What I'm after is that I've, myself and others have considered that Ken has acted inappropriate and in bias, and is in a position where he's in a position to control or to affect a decision to be made. And
Isn't
if,
that
in
what
fact,
you're
that
also
he's
trying to
making
do
money
as well?
doing so.
But aren't you trying to do the same thing by
No,
being
I
here?
have no money whatsoever to make. I have nothing to do with it other than I own houses in a house in Kenema. I've never, ever had any way, shape, or form.
So you're wanting to eliminate a member based on what they may or may not do in the future?
I'm willing to eliminate a member who is making money, and that's the key element, making money, selling real estate, and then ruling on appropriateness. And I'm trying to do it based upon the way it was explained to me by the head of the Ethics
But you could
Commission
also
of the State of
eliminate
Oregon.
me because I'm a general contractor and I may or may not work in Kenema in the future. So therefore, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to be on the board as well to talk about this.
Well, if you were doing a job that you were ruling on, you were making a decision on, and you went ahead and, as a contractor and worked on that job, or was called in to work on the job, that in the way it was explained to me. I'm not the attorney.
Well, I'm gonna interrupt all of this because whether or not there's an ethics violation is not germane to proceeding on a public hearing. The question for purposes of public hearing is whether or not the commissioners can make a decision based on the approval criteria, and they've indicated that they can. So unless you have a question about the contacts disclosed and the nature of those contacts, there's not much else to talk about.
Okay, well, I will bring it up. I brought it up, and I want to be part of the record. So in the future, if in fact we can apply this, this is all about dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
I
Thank
will
you.
ask you one question before you
Yeah.
go. Are you aware that a public ethics complaint was filed against me last fall? It included the very thing you're talking about. The state's ethics commission rejected it in its entirety. I have the letter right
Oh,
here.
I have, and I have a copy of it too. But it was based upon the fact that they've said, has the person made money? And that's one of the
I
issues.
think you misunderstood the issue.
Okay, well, there, on another one there was. Thank you.
All right, we will move forward with the commission report at this point.
Thank you, Chair Basinger. This application and proposal is for a new single-family home and detached garage with accessory dwelling unit in the Kenema National Register District. The HRB held the first hearing a month ago in August. There was a continuance requested. Since then, the applicant submitted a revised design for the home. The location is at unimproved Apperson Street and Fifth Avenue. The property sits behind 702 4th Avenue, which is a designated historic site, A.E. Davis residence, a contributing structure in the district. The other neighboring homes are non-contributing. That includes 616 4th, 712 4th, and 716 4th. There are other contributing resources across the street of across 4th Avenue. The lot is 10,000 square feet. It's bordered by 3 rights-of-way, Apperson Street, 5th Avenue, and Alley, all of which are unimproved. The back of the lot is heavily forested and has a steep slope. And the front portion of the lot is a little bit flatter and has one significant tree. And there's that front of the lot with the single tree that you can see there. Access to the property would be provided from an existing driveway off of 4th. This site is in the geologic hazard overlay. An application has not yet been submitted to the city for a geologic hazard review. And so any public works, access, or engineering items have not been reviewed yet. The A.E. Davis residence is shown here looking from 4th Avenue. It's vernacular design, 1.5 stories and about 20 feet wide. And there's an addition on the back of the home that's it's quite a bit wider than 20 feet. There's another look at the Davis home. And if you see to the left of the house, there's a lighter colored tree, lighter green. That's the same tree that we looked at earlier that's kind of in the middle of the property. So the home is proposed to face 4th Avenue. Normally, in the R6 zone, we would require the house to face the street, which would be Apperson Street. In this case, it's more historically appropriate to face 4th. The garage is proposed next to the home. With an accessory dwelling unit above the garage. The buildings are placed towards the front of the lot to avoid the steeper portion on the rear and avoid the tree, the forested area. Staff has recommended conditions of approval regarding screening of the buildings along the lot lines and in between the contributing resource and the new buildings. A condition of approval for minimal grading and for tree removal. We don't see any trees on the site plan, so it's not clear what sort of tree removal would be needed for these structures. Of course, that one in the middle would have to go, but all the trees along the rear are it's not clear what would happen to those. And so there's a condition of approval that if any of those are removed, that if they're over 6-inch diameter, they would be replaced 1-for-1. The applicant has revised the design of the home based on a discussion at the August meeting. And that would the revisions include bringing the first floor porch forward, creating a hip roof on both sides of the front porch, and closing the 2nd story terrace. The home has an L-shaped footprint. The front portion is 24 feet wide. That doesn't include the wing on the left. It has a prominent front porch in bungalow style. Staff has recommended some conditions of approval for height reduction, which we'll talk more about. Screening of the any exposed lattice, and for landscaping to provide a buffer. And just because we talked about it a lot last meeting, the yellow house on 5th. This is 503 Madison Street. It's an example of a 2-story bungalow in the McLaughlin district, and this one is the Arthur and Daisy Farr house, and it is contributing our designated site in the McLaughlin district. the side elevations. These weren't revised, but the revised plan would show the front porch coming out an additional 2 feet. And of course, that second story is enclosed now, so those are a little bit misleading now. The design of the house includes overhanging eaves, exposed rafter tails, decorative knee brackets. The windows on all the facades meet the design guidelines. The materials meet design guidelines, with the exception that we need a little bit more information on the MDO plywood porch posts, so there's a condition of approval for that. Floor plans are shown here. And then here's the detached garage and ADU. The garage, so the placement of this is a little bit behind the front porch of the house. So it's set off to the side and a little bit back. The garage doors face the home, not the front, not 4th Avenue. There's a stair to the upper ADU on the side of the building. There's an upper terrace with the ADU set back on the back edge of the garage. It's a 2-story design. The total height of this building is 21 feet compared to the home, which is proposed at about 24 feet. The design that we see here is it's not found in Kenema, but its individual parts are, and those parts are, detached 2-car garage, a detached ADU, and, a terrace on top of a garage. So the applicant has kind of combined those 3 individual parts into one structure. The windows and materials proposed meet the design guidelines. We have a condition of approval for carriage-style doors and ensuring that the railing on the stair has a top and bottom rail. Here's an example in McLaughlin of a terrace over a garage. And then a recently approved combination garage ADU in Kenema. This is at 203 3rd Avenue, approved earlier this year. It doesn't include the terrace, but it does include a 2nd-story ADU. This is the rear of the home and of the garage. The staff report contains more detailed findings and analysis of the building form, style, materials, and siding. And one focus of the staff report is the 2-story design. Carrie will elaborate more on this later. And so I will just kind of skip through this slide for now. The preservation incentive that has been requested is to reduce the side setback on the garage to 5 feet. This proposal actually requires another incentive, which is to consider 4th Avenue lot line the front rather than Apperson Street. So normally in the R6 zone, the front setback, which would be on Apperson, would be 10 feet. And we have a 5-foot setback. And the rear setback, which would typically be at the alley, would be 20 feet. And we're looking at a 5-foot setback because we're looking at it as a side setback. And so staff recommends approval of all of those preservation incentives. And then Carrie.
Thank you, Chair Banksinger and Historic Review Board members. I have been invited to talk a little bit more about the Friends of Kenema versus Oregon City case that was brought up during the design advice meeting that you all had, and a couple of issues were reiterated as part of this. And so I wanted to sort of go through those issues as Mr. Nocita, who was the attorney for the Friends of Kenema, stated, the city's decision was affirmed. So the city had approved the cottage homes proposal, the city commission approved it, and LUBA affirmed the city's decision. So the approval stands, and that decision was appealed to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals has just last week reaffirmed the Luba decision. So there isn't an issue with regard to how we did it there, but there is some instructive language from Luba that we're going to use going forward. And they relate to two sort of components. One is the incentive piece, and the other is sort of how we use our design guidelines. And Luba expressed some concern that the relationship, whether the guidelines are approval criteria or they're not approval criteria, whether they're guidelines is ambiguous, because in the guidelines themselves, it says that they are guidance only and that's all they are. But one of the approval criteria for granting a certificate of appropriateness is compliance with the guidelines, which suggests that they're approval criteria. So what Luba said was not that they were criteria or that they weren't criteria. They said that they were going to decide on a case-by-case determination based on whether or not the guideline language itself suggests that it is mandatory. And so the guidelines, as you know, are divided up into sort of two main sections. There are, in the new construction design guidelines, there's the residential building style section, which goes through the vernacular and the bungalow in McLaughlin, and then the vernacular and the bungalow for Kenema. And that sort of includes a section called characteristics of the style, and it sort of is a list of all the things that make a bungalow a bungalow. Luba explained that section constitutes, quote, a description of the Kenema Historic Districts and are not mandatory approval criteria. But then the second part of the guidelines are called character guidelines, and this section is the part of the guidelines that has the sort of things that are good examples, and then it has things that are not permitted. And Luba suggested that the activities and features listed in the not allowed column are prohibited, and the things in the other column merely list good examples. So I've quoted those portions of Luba's opinion as sort of instructive of how we kind of ought to think about the guidelines going forward. In this case, you want to go to the next slide? So in this case, we've got some folks who have said that the bungalow style isn't allowed, or that this is a different type of a bungalow style than is seen in Kenema. And the guidelines provide that the bungalow style is the second most common architectural style, and it says that it is found scattered on hillside up to 4th Street, but generally on more level lots. I think that would indicate that the bungalow style is found in Kenema, and therefore it is an appropriate stylistic choice for complementing contributing resources within the district. And in fact, the character guidelines, which I said are the more of the two sections of the guidelines, are the more mandatory section. In the good example category, it provides for adjacent historic houses, very informed design and style, new infill to differentiate, but continue this pattern. So I think that this would indicate that there's supposed to be differentiation and that we're not supposed to be encouraging uniformity. And so the bungalow style and this redesign, particularly that accentuates the horizontality of the bungalow, I think would be consistent with and further the good examples identified in the design guidelines. Building height. Building height, on the other hand, taught in both the design guidelines, the first section, and when they talk about the character of a bungalow, it says height 1 or more, often 1.5 stories high, possible basement. So that's in the sort of characteristics of the bungalow style. But then in the character guidelines, it says Kenema residential, quote, greater than 1.5 story maximum height plus basement is not allowed. So this would suggest that this is sort of mandatory, that it needs to be 1.5 stories. But then if you look at the introductory portion of the guidelines, it says that the guidelines allow for alternative designs. And in the Friends of Kenema case for Luba, there was no alternative design discussion. So I cannot other than using the language from the design guidelines themselves, all I can instruct you about is that the guidelines allow for alternative designs. And that would suggest you could do something different than the prohibition, than the 1.5 story requirement, by evaluating, quote, the significance of the impact, measuring how well the alternative fits into the intent of the guidelines, and essentially the end effect on the historic district. So presumably, it could be a 2-story building if you mitigated, or if it wasn't visible, or if, I mean, that there may be design solutions to mitigate for the impacts, and you all are qualified to make that determination. In staff's view, they felt that although the alternative design is allowed, the applicant had not provided a perspective view to show the prominence of the proposed home in relation to the A.E. Davis residence. And so for that reason, staff has recommended reducing the height of the home, of the second story, from 5-foot walls to, or 7-foot walls to 5 foot, to make the home a 1.5 story structure. So that is staff's recommendation on the height issue.
Got it. Very good, thank you.
Wait, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I've got one more slide, incentives, and I was just gonna talk about the incentives issue really quickly. So the argument that was presented at the design advice, as I understand it, is that new construction doesn't qualify for design incentives, or the incentives that allow you to deviate from the code, because new construction only includes construction on a site that already has a designated resource on it. And the definition that the proponents of this interpretation are relying on is a section from 1704-815, new construction, which is the middle item on this slide. New construction means an additional new building or structure separate from the existing building mass that is larger than 200 square feet on all properties located within a historic overlay district. And they have interpreted that to mean that unless it has a historic structure on it, it's not new construction, and then you can't use the incentive. And I believe that a more appropriate contextual argument is that new construction includes any new building within a historic district for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you look at the bottom provision, 1740-060A, and this is the provision that requires you to get a certificate of appropriateness generally. You know, you have to get one in order to do things in a historic district. It says, no person shall alter any historic site in such a manner as to affect its exterior appearance, nor shall there be any new construction in a historic district conservation, and then the list goes on of other things, unless a certificate of appropriateness has previously been issued by the Historic Review Board. If we were to take the more narrow interpretation proposed by the proponents, you would not need a certificate of appropriateness to build on a vacant piece of property in a historic district, because that vacant piece of property wouldn't already have a historic structure in it. And that's not the way we've interpreted the word new construction for purposes of 1740. And to go even further, when we think about historic districts are an amalgamation of the whole, right? Every contributing resources contributes to this larger preservation significance determination, and they all work together, right? That's why new structures have to be compatible and complementary, because if we have something that is incompatible, it brings the whole district down, because the whole district works as a whole. And if you think about it that way, any new building has to complement, right? If we allowed an incentive, if we didn't allow an incentive to allow a building to mitigate and enhance the existing resources more, it wouldn't be consistent with the policy of granting incentives. If we can push this new building back, if we can provide additional landscaping, if we can do something to modify the standards to further, to enhance, I think the word in the design guidelines, complement the historic district to a greater degree, we want to do that, regardless whether there's a historic building on the site or not, because the whole district works together. So that is the city's recommended interpretation of that incentive provision. And I think that's how I've interpreted it historically, and that's how staff would do so in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Reed. If not, we'll hear from the applicant,
Yeah, I don't have.
who I think talked long enough for the applicant's architect to arrive. Any questions?
No, that was awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Good.
All right, we'll ask the applicants to come forward then.
Take the legalese off the board and put up the pretty pictures.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Todd Iceland, Iceland Architects,
Morris
1807 7th Street.
Morris Shademan, property owner.
Sorry to be late. I thought we were later in the agenda, but I appreciate it.
We moved quicker than.
Okay, so you've already heard the staff report and everything?
Yes, we have.
I guess there's one item in the staff report that we're asking to not approve, and that's the recommendation to lower it an additional 2 feet at the upper level. We don't feel it's necessary, and doing so would actually make headroom very difficult. It would not allow us to truss the roof. It would create issues at the stair also. So we're asking that it remain at the 7 foot as proposed at the second floor.
Can I ask you, what's the square footage of the house?
1680, I think.
I think it's, yes. It's in the staff report.
Yeah, I just can't remember.
It was in our application. It's a very modest house. It's,
2 bedrooms. Yeah.
and I was hoping to get a street view rendering done that would actually show that this house is not very visible at all from the street. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to get that completed. But there is a fairly steep embankment at the street, and then this property
Setback.
there are other properties in front of it as well.
Can I see the side view, like if you, from, the left side turning it? Yeah.
The application
That's
says
what-
it's 1,600 square feet.
16. And this is, didn't we have, wasn't there updated elevations with,
The only updated
there
elevations we
is-
received were for the front and then the floor plan.
I thought we had a side one
There's
too.
one on the side.
There was a side.
This is not the updated one, though.
No, but I'm pretty sure there was one that was,
It's in the attachments, yeah, I can pull it up.
It's the-
yeah, that's the one I wanted to, yeah.
By pushing it back, as suggested last time, or actually we've moved the porch out further,
Right.
it really does incorporate it more into the roof and keeps it more in character with the bungalow.
Yeah, it looks
style.
good from there. I was just I wanted to look at the side and talk about the elevation on reduced there. Yeah, awesome. Excuse me. But see, now it's fuzzy for me. What's the lower roof? Is that a 312?
It is a 412.
412?
No, I'm sorry, it is a 512.
No, the lower roof. The lower hip porch roof is a 5?
Yes, it is the same.
So I can't. Oh, well, now I see that. I see the back roof is a 5, but the porch roof is a 5. Huh.
It hips all the way around.
Yeah,
It's-
so from staff's perspective, reducing the plate to 5 feet brings it more in line with a story and a half, is what you're saying. Todd, what are the front windows? What are the height of those windows?
I believe they're 4.5 feet.
Let's see, bungalow's max pitch is 6. Can I see the front elevation, please? Thanks. So the idea is you want a story and a half. I get it, that's a historic character of a bungalow, so just thinking out loud again. And I'm not a big steep pitch fan with bungalows, but if you kept the 512 on the roof, reduced the windows to maybe 3, a bank of 3-footers, and increase that lower roof to a 6, it might bring it up a titch. I mean, the idea is to make it look like a story and a half.
And we're
I know.
really encroaching, and then we also run into egress windows that become issues.
Right. Bringing it down the plate to 5 foot kills those windows. And even if you increase the pitch to 6, that's I don't know. The idea of a story and a half isn't so much to reduce a plate height as it is to make that second story feel like it's buried in the roof. And what's the minimum casement for egress? Isn't it a
42 inches, I think.
3.5 high? Yeah. And these are 4.5. What if you did a 3.5 bank of windows, drop that pitch to maybe 6, or the plate to 6, brought up the lower roof to 5.5 or 6, do a little combination of things? I'm just trying to spitball here.
Yeah, I know, and we have looked at a lot of these.
I'm sure you have. You've probably anticipated anything that I could even think of. I'm just,
We really
I
don't
get
want to
it.
increase the main roof at all. The lower roof, we looked at increasing, but then it really starts to look odd because then we're really losing that bungalow feel.
Can I see the floor plan?
If anything, the porch roof would have been a lower pitch typically.
Right.
Sorry.
We looked at putting dormers on the sides and stuff to make the windows work for egress.
How wide's the bedroom, where the bed is? How wide is that?
I believe it's about 12 feet or 14 possibly.
Not very wide.
No.
What if that went on top of that, right there? Just talking. What if, I know this sounds kind of silly, but the upper level, what if that turned 90 degrees and went over the back section, okay? And then you came forward with something a little shallower so that that porch roof then comes up, comes back further, so this thing looks like,
Really trying to preserve that view out. to
I
the
know,
river, too.
I'm just, I get what both staff and you are saying. But you understand, there are 2-story bungalows, but 1.5 story would be the predominant. But
Well, we're not a full two-story.
Well, yeah, you are.
We could take another 6 inches out, if that helped, but I don't think it would.
Guys, see the front again? Somebody throw me a lifeline.
I mean, we're only 24 feet to the peak.
Guys, your pen, Grant. It's 24 feet. What's the first floor, 9 feet? Ceiling height?
9 foot.
8 feet for the second floor?
7 feet for the second floor.
7 feet to the plate.
Right.
That's right. 17. You said 24, so that's 7. 7. 24, 7 feet. 7-foot plate, that's right, 7-foot plate.
If I may request from staff, I don't know if you can get that, but I think it was the second to the last sheet in Ms. Richter's presentation discussed the,
The height.
the alternative designs.
I go with number 3. I mean, the third section there. Alternative designs by evaluating the significance of the impact, measuring how well the alternative fits in the intent of the guideline. Historic district.
Thing is, I see paragraph number 2 there is pretty unequivocal.
Yeah. Not allowed.
Well, I think that what they're asking for is an alternative design approval. And on this throwing the lifeline idea, I don't think we have a good feeling of what the street view perspective is. I don't know where the house is behind the Davis house. And so to me, that would matter because that's what would give you the sense of it being 2 stories or 10 stories. I mean, that's to me, and you guys probably have a feel of the area better, so you guys know. But when I
It's up
look at
there.
the Davis house and then Kelly says there's a tree and that tree is where the house will be, well, which part of the house? How much of the house is going to be blocked? Will the house stick up above? Will you see the roof above the Davis house or not? I mean, those are kinds of questions that I kind of think would be relevant to the question of the alternative design, assuming you can't get there any other way.
Right, and that's where it could fall into place with the perspective.
Right.
Oh, she got the Dr. Pepper.
My feeling is that I don't see the overall height being a problem. And I did find your revised narrative to be very helpful and pretty compelling, both with the
pictures.
The airplane bungalows and some of the examples of other bungalows that have kind of second-story elements in, if not within Oregon City, within the metro area, that someone building a bungalow during the time period would have been aware of these type of designs if they wanted to be. However, what I see missing is that all those seem to have at least some element of that 1.5 story roof, even if the second story portion extends more. And that's kind of what I feel is missing in this design. I don't know if off the left wing, that roof could be extended. If you brought that forward and had the roof go up so that it was 1.5 story there with a kind of additional extension of the full 2 story on the portion there, it might have more of the bungalow feel or something. I'm not sure. I don't know if we should continue into the other public comments and then deliberations, or if we should. I don't have any specific questions, I guess.
My question would be back to the applicants on that.
Well, let's take all the testimony we have. If you don't have any questions for these applicants, let's take the testimony that we have hearing slips for, and then we can figure out what you want to do next.
That sounds good.
Are these for,
Thank you.
but we've already heard from them.
On a
Not
different
on
matter,
this.
on a different, Mr. Edgar.
So just the one. Excuse me.
Thank you, Paul Edgar, Friends of Kenema. First of all, I want to thank the city attorney for the clarifications that you did. I think that was wonderful. Thank you. When I read the building guidelines, one of the things that there was another word on 2 stories or 1.5 stories when the city's building guidelines. And in it, it says it uses the word only. And that was a statement in and about 1.5 stories. I felt that a lot of the changes that were made were really pretty good. Thank you, John, for some of the stuff that you offered up, because
I was winging it.
it does look better than what was presented last time. But it's still 2 stories, and that's inappropriate. And when we compare it to houses, and it's in these guidelines, when we talk, we're comparing it not to McLaughlin. We're talking about to the houses in the immediate area, and in particularly, we're talking about houses in Kenema. And we're comparing it to bungalows in Kenema, not McLaughlin, not on Monroe, or someplace else. And that's part of what the guidelines state. And so it is in this mindset that it has this appearance of almost being double the size of any bungalow ever in the history of Kenema. So you go out there and try to find anything that is even comparable to it in Kenema, and there isn't. And when we get into this height scenario, yes, if they brought the house down to 1.5 stories by reducing the height of the walls, that would be, I think, a very good move and would be a lifeline. There should be in these windows up there, all of these old windows that we had were double hung. And I see these big one single glass on them. I think that there's something that needs to be done to the windows to bring the windows into a greater appearance, particularly the ones on the upper floor that shield the deck or the terrace. The height of that lot really scales up really high. And that's one of the reasons why it's got some landslide issues that could be associated with it. But that's the reason why the height of this house on that particular lot and where the siding is of it really puts the house up very, very high.
Paul, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You're all right with the staff's recommendation of reducing the plate from 7 feet to 5 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
I have significant concern about the
Airplane one.
about the ADU. The ADU has no design appropriateness, period, to anything that has any comparable design to a building of virtually any type of historic contributing factors in Kenema. And this outside deck on it, something has to be done to make that ADU garage have some degree of design compatibility. Right now, there is virtually nothing that I can see that is other than detracting and not appropriate. I guess I'll end it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we do the rebuttal, I should have mentioned, we received some more testimony, that I think, did you place it on the dais? So there's some additional testimony that was also received.
It's been emailed to the board,
Mr. Green's letter.
and we
Is that
issued,
the man who had the concerns about the
Yes.
garage?
yeah, and we issued a revised agenda late today as well.
I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that there was some additional testimony that was submitted. So at this point, rebuttal would be the next thing on the list for,
From the applicant.
From the
from the
applicant.
applicant.
Can the applicant come forward?
There was only one comment? I thought there was two.
No,
That's
that
all we
was
had.
that unrelated one. I had a question for the applicant. That's all right.
Okay.
Or unless you want to make your rebuttal comment, then I can ask you a question.
Go ahead and start with the question.
My only question was if that plate was reduced to 5 feet, you could have smaller windows with the center window being the minimum size casement egress. So they would be a bank with a taller window. Now, as far as stairs go, I would assume that gable all the way through is vaulted, correct?
It could be.
It should be. So if you reduce the side windows to like 2.6 or something, bring the plate down to 5, maybe 5.5, if there's a way to massage that, with a lower bank of windows on either side wrapping around with maybe a window in the middle that may be the 3.5 foot tall. I'm just talking, that could be the casement, but that you would throw a glue lamp up there and vault this thing all the way through. That would also probably solve the problem with the stairs as well.
It would. The issue is you wouldn't have any windows with any views out of the second story on the side walls. You would, I mean,
Everybody's got to give a little and grab a little.
we'd really prefer not to.
No, I get it, but I'm also trying to think trying to come up with ideas that appease to everyone. So I totally get that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. I'd rather throw out an option that, whether you like it or not, than not throw out anything at all. So,
Well, and I believe in Mr. Green's letter, he does address that too, about not wanting to see the height of that upper floor reduced.
no, I don't want it to either. I think it looks fine personally. I'm fine with it. I'm just also, I don't know, I'm just saying, hey, I'm fine with things, but here's another thought,
Right.
is this an option? Kind of, I'd rather than just let something go the wayside and, So, the other part of that is, even if those windows, even if you were to reduce those windows and bring the pitch of that lower roof up, it does lend a little bit more to it feeling like a story and a half. I think I was right. I think the maximum roof pitch is like a 6 for a bungalow. And that's such a short roof that going up 6 might get you another, I don't know what that width is there, but maybe another foot and a half up the roof, but like,
That would be preferable, I think, to stepping the windows at the gable end, because then you're really losing that.
well, like what Grant was saying, that this gable end here on this the left side elevation, if you brought that roof pitch around, 'cause that's what you're saying, right? Right here at this pitch line, bring it around, because you've got these upper windows, and bring it around, then you look like you got a story and a half. So, without having my laser,
No, I see what you're saying, and I would be agreeable to doing that, to raising it to 612. I think we could make that work.
yeah, you'd sacrifice some window, but you'd make it look more like a story and a half, and that would,
Correct.
you'd still keep the plate height.
And we could have an egress window on the side that way too.
You could. But if you bring that, now, can we go to the side? Yeah. So if you bring that guy,
It would raise that up.
that guy straight across, how much does that clip off? Then you're coming up and you're making that wall look like it's buried in the roof. That's the whole goal, right?
Right.
And then you would have to sacrifice plate height. You'd sacrifice some window. You still have a killer view. You still have cool stuff. And actually, you're probably, if you follow the shingle line across, you're probably clipping off about a foot off those windows.
Off the two little ones,
No,
or just the big ones?
the big ones. The little ones fall underneath that, I mean above that easily. You might lose a foot, maybe 14 inches with trim. Actually, it would look pretty cool because then you're really feeling like, yes, it's a story and a half because the idea is to bury more of that second floor into the roof instead of sacrificing the second floor.
What's it do to this other side then? Is it gonna do the same thing or just,
Well, yeah, those front windows, side
It would all
windows,
line all the way across.
yeah.
but it's only gonna affect the first window underneath the porch?
You've already got egress, you've got egress for that
Right,
bedroom.
we do there
So
now.
you're not
but if we-
losing,
If we reduce it to 5 foot, we don't have egress.
you turn it into a casement.
Well, a casement that's floor height. Time you get a header in there.
Would be. Well, you could also
Or
stick
with
a
the
couple
dormer, But dormer's gonna detract from the style.
No, you've got a minimum 4x6 header there.
Yeah,
And, if you have one as a single hung and the other, you're gonna be low and they'd have to be tempered.
I would prefer to raise the pitch of the lower roof to 612.
Right. If you do that, you're gonna have to reduce the height of the windows, the overall.
The sill height would come out, but the egress window could remain there on the side, on the right side.
Right. Yeah. If we keep it at a 712.
Correct.
Yeah. And those windows in the front, on the front porch just become lower and everything still works.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because the roof's gonna stop here, so. What about the upper roof being a 412? Do you think that would help it look to be more of a story and a half if it was a little lower?
I don't think it would.
All right. I think that's the end of my spitballing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like.
A question then for staff, if you understood what John was saying
Did anybody?
regarding the increased height of the porch roof relative to the windows and everything on the second floor, would that, in your opinion, satisfy the 1.5-story requirement?
I think we need to see it.
Yeah.
We need the evidence to be in the record.
The other problem is if you bring that lower roof up to height of this side 512, that could potentially make that roof taller, more than a 6, possibly.
It won't.
It won't. Well, yeah, and I think we may need, and I apologize if we keep dragging this. We just want to get it right, so you're dialed, right? But
We told them up front, we're not in a hurry.
But you do want to build it.
we want you to spend money.
Yeah.
So I think it would be corrections on what we suggested, as well as perspective from street level showing with the other house and how this relates. I think that would also satisfy what Carrie was saying, is getting all the views and seeing how it does look. I mean, if you're going to do that, you could flip your wand and make it happen, right?
Yeah, you know that.
It sounds like we're going for a continuance here for them to.
So far, we're just talking, and I don't know if we've
I
gotten there.
appreciate that, but, and I'm happy for you guys to keep talking, that's fine, but
No,
I think we're gonna need some discussion also about the garage. And so I think we need to give some
So you-
guidance on the garage. If
So before we go to the garage, are you groovy with what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I don't think the question is, are they okay with it? The question is, do they have any questions about it?
No. Are you all right if you've made those options to have that change and so that we can see what it looks like?
It's definitely preferable to reducing that second floor wall to 5 foot.
I would agree. Okay. So that's good on that. So then the next question would be, unless you have something else.
The only other thing I'd add to that is the three-dimensional rendering
Right.
from the street that would show us what it kind of actually might look like, how it relates to the Davis house. I think that would be a useful thing to have.
Yeah, both those things.
Yeah.
Have you all visited the site? And
Yes.
so you know what it is like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
this
yeah.
isn't even going to be visible, really.
Great. I mean, better to show that than to talk about it, yeah. So that would be that. Then we
Okay.
talk about the
Now the
ADU.
garage and the ADU. Are you searching? Yeah. We have two public testimony. Saying that the design of this is distracting.
Well,
So,
this is meant to be a very simple building. It's a very simple building form. Most garages that were constructed after the historic period and are not, in most cases, compatible with the houses. This will be more compatible, more integrated through the use of materials, the pitch of the roof. We've added the full half wall rather than the railings that we had there initially, to try to get the massing more consistent with the house. The stairs being on the backside, we felt were more appropriate and not be seeing those, because those are rather distracting. Putting the stairs inside was not something the owner wanted. This is likely going to be a very small cottage that they're going to live in during the construction of the house.
Yeah, plus the stairs take up a lot of space, if I wanna park cars in there, you know, so it's
No.
it's a small garage to start with, so you put stairs in there and you might as well just forget about one side, putting a car in it.
So if I understand or trying to remember all the legal stuff, the incentive for this with the 5-foot setback would be appropriate from what you were saying.
Yeah, I don't think the question is whether or not the incentive is appropriate. I think that if the evidence is that the greater distance between these structures is good from a design compatibility standpoint, then I don't think the incentive for the setback is the issue. I think the issue is that this is 2 stories. And there isn't any precedent for this kind of design in Kenema, whether that matters or not. And then, as staff pointed out, you've got an ADU and a terrace and a garage. And that's more things in one building than you may have looked at before. So there are a couple of things about this that are a little different, or maybe not, but that's, I think, where we need some guidance.
also did not want to make the entire structure 1.5 stories. We would lose that deck out there. We're keeping it a very minimal footprint on the second floor. It is 2 stories at that very small area, but the overall massing is not very tall because of that. And if you look at the front elevation in relation to the house, you'll see it actually steps down.
But you understand what she's saying with the elements that are out of place?
I do. We're also, bearing it into the hillside on the 2-story volume side there.
But that's where a rendering showing the view would be very helpful because that may be not visible from anywhere.
Or you won't see it at all. The Davis house is right in front of it.
You've got to be there to see it. You can't see it from the street.
No, you would have to be on their front porch to see it, basically.
And there are some houses in Oregon City that have garages that have decks on them with little living quarters on them. I've
And there
taken
were-
pictures of them.
And there were garages that would
Yeah,
go with
and
flat
they were
roofs.
old, they were flat roof garages and they utilized the top of
This one's pretty big, though. I mean, in relation to the rest of it, but
Well, yeah, most of the old ones were just 1-car garage. They were
Right.
Still flat roofed. And
right.
sometimes they were attached to the house though, and you had an entrance right on the top of the garage. Yeah.
Maybe I ought to just keep my mouth shut.
I'm thinking back again to the criteria for an alternative design kind of approval on this. And if you can make the case for that, then we would certainly consider it.
And that's what we're seeking, is an alternative design.
What about a broader overhang at the front door? Maybe it's a little broader, came out a titch more. I'm not trying to detract from the windows, but I don't know,
What?
instead of that tiny little roof over the
Wider.
door, maybe make it a little wider with a little bit more of a valley, and it comes out as maybe a kind of a party porch that's a little bit more,
Oh, like a.
well, no, a pitch that comes out, you have a little bit more protection from the weather, so it's more of a,
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, and that would be,
and I'm not trying to create massing, it just looks like it's ready to fall over. But, and maybe,
Well, we could make the living area bigger, I guess, but I thought there was a limit to how big you could make a ADU. I think they're trying to change the rules and make them,
well, you can make it bigger than what you have, that's for sure.
well, we're limited by I believe it's 40% of the square footage of the home.
Yeah.
That's right.
But even if you went with an overhang that went to the middle of the next garage bay over, and made it a little wider, maybe that'll soften things so it's not so kapow on one side, I don't know.
Again, the only place you'd see this view is
I know.
from the porch.
Right now, it's the only view we see,
Right.
so it would be
Trying
good to
be
have.
very accurate.
Yeah. I guess the perspective would be extremely helpful.
Well,
But even a perspective that may not be from the street, but maybe from the house or just below as you're coming up that road, something that, I don't know, maybe a couple of shots of it, but is that difficult to generate?
Not terribly, once we generate the first one.
If I could, I would suggest a perspective drawing from kind of both sides of the Davis house. So if you're coming from Fourth on either direction on each side, to see what it looks like, from each side. Two
Yeah.
perspectives.
From the
could we get another
south side of the
No, so we
house,
do
you
it
won't see any of this.
So we can,
So kind of on this side, maybe you couldn't see it, but kind of in between the edge of the picture and that tree, what can we see from there? And then,
Absolutely nothing.
and then on
makes a good
the other
case.
side of the house too.
This side, from this view, you won't see anything either.
Yeah, show us.
Yeah, but that makes a better case, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
if you go back to that other photo you had of the driveway and the road
Oh.
that comes up, this is the only place you even catch a glimpse of the house or the garage.
That's a good view to take a shot from. You know, you can take that and superimpose it on there.
We've had a request to give another public comment. If you want to entertain that at some point.
We can do that. Are you comfortable with a continuance to next month to do those things?
I'd rather have approval tonight.
I know
If that's
you
an
would.
option, I'll take it.
I hear you. I totally hear you.
Where are we with the 120 days?
It's been design advice up until last month, right? And then it was a continuance.
I
Correct.
think yes, that's correct.
So, Kelly will work with the applicant if we need to extend that.
Yeah.
Could probably wrap it up next month.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And who was it wishing to
Mr.
speak?
Edgar?
Thank you. I would come back up for a brief. I'd like to give you some, again, Paul Edgar, Kenema neighbor, Friends of Kenema. On the garage, if that garage was extended, where the roof was extended out to the front, and it was, so we kind of reverse where the roof and the terrace is. So the terrace now becomes on the back, but get minimized. What I'd love to see is waiving the 40% rule and just literally trying to create a bungalow on top of that garage with 1.5 story bungalow and try to, I would love to see even the staircase go inside so as we can try to kind of minimize its footprint, its outward appearance of the footprint, but have a lot of view going out towards this house and towards the river on that side and from windows. I just think that the way it is, it's kind of like a half of a little building on top of the garage, and the way it is, there's nothing design appropriate, and just trying to figure out how you could kind of, I flip it, kind of run the whole roof across, coming out and peaked on that what I perceive or call the north end.
Well, that's what I was suggesting, is bringing that roof out.
Yeah.
But even, you could soften the front if you did something like that with some sort of a trellis out front above the garage. That would soften the front.
But the way it is right now,
Understand what it-
it needs something that makes it have some design compatibility or appropriateness or comparability to something that's contributing in a design within Kenema. And so my hope would be that if they took and covered a lot of the terrace, but I would say kind of cover it on the back end and then create a path that goes out because of the steepness of the lot, then I would be walking out on a kind of like a deck that extends out flat to the ground. So I want to have that so that they can walk out egress directly
Oh.
off the second floor, straight out onto the slope behind. And it's that steep. And so you look at the backside as having a nice ability for fire escape. And the front side or the north side that looks to the river having the greatest window and place where somebody could be sitting down. The way the storms come in, it will hit along that side, and it would be, the backside is the one that you want to try to have the most protection on.
So you'd be okay with a,
I am just trying to,
oh yeah, you're doing great, but you'd be all right with that 5-foot incentive to help mitigate the stairs and do things with the terrace.
I would prefer to see the
Because you know that's just vacant Everything's-
And I know, I'm least concerned about that in this case, as I am trying to get the design into something that has some degree of compatibility. And what it is right now, it's really lacking. And it was like working with you guys to come up with something. And if they could just make it a mini bungalow and try to do something with it, but the way it is right now, it needs your help. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, but at the same time, we have to remember this is someone's house and we want to make sure they're happy with it.
Yeah.
And that they're investing a lot of money
And
into
it's
it.
right now, it's a two-story, and a two-story should not be there.
Do you know the square footage of the ADU?
I think it's 292 square feet.
300 feet, and that's at the 40%.
So it's 40% of the primary dwelling, so
Which
you
is
can go
16.
bigger on the ADU.
It could actually go bigger if it's,
Yeah, the footprint of the garage though can't get much bigger, because the maximum is 600
but they could go definitely more
on the ADU.
on the ADU. Yeah, so you could take a gable going perpendicular to the other one and bringing it out to get a little bit more to balance things. That's a thought. And like what Paul was saying, if there's a way to terrace in the back so you didn't have stairs that get weathered and rotted and beat, it's a thought, something to think about. So,
Yeah, I think if you went, instead of being full 2 on the ADU, if you did it as a 1.5, you're not gonna count the portion,
right,
the low portions, right, under 5 foot, I guess, on the,
yeah, if
of the
you
gable, so
could get a little more out of it,
it's gonna look a lot better, but not necessarily have the square footage be that much
right, I think it would.
larger.
It's a thought. Put a trellis out front, soften it, yeah. Something to think about. So what do we do?
We have a motion for continuance.
Do we close the public hearing?
No, the record is open and the record
Keep
will
it open?
remain open for the.
Because it's been open since
Because
last
it's
month.
been open, it was open when we decided we were gonna have this hearing today.
Right, so
And
if we,
people have submitted things, and so those things are in.
so you don't need to do a continuance if it's already open.
We need to continue the hearing to a date certain so people know when to come back. And so the date certain is,
October 23rd.
so you'll take a motion for a continuance to October 23rd. The public record is open, so anyone can submit written testimony between now and then, and we will reconvene on the 23rd to continue the hearing.
So we need
But
to
we
make-
will at this point close the public
Hearing.
record
No, you're gonna
Hearing.
close the public hearing.
hearing. Yes.
But
keep
make
the
a
record
motion for
open.
continuance,
Yeah.
yeah. So we need to make a motion. Is that what,
That's it.
was it my turn? It seemed like you did the last one, maybe.
I don't know. So I move to continue PC 18122, HR 1811, Historic Review Board review of a new home with attached garage and accessory dwelling unit in Kenema Historic Register District at 5th and Apperson to a date certain of October 23rd.
I would second that.
Mr. Blythe?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Chair Basinger?
Aye. Continuance is granted. And
That'll be at 6 or 7. 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock.
I don't know.
So the meeting's gonna start at 6 and we'll most likely have a work session at 6 and then take a break and reconvene at 7 for the public hearings.
Work session. Is there other stuff for next month?
We delayed our fence policy discussion from today until next month. And the solar panel folks might have an application
Oh.
in potentially next month.
Okay, item 7 on the agenda is back to Kelly, communications.
I think what I was going to tell you was the Luba decision was affirmed, and so Carrie already said that, so I don't have anything else.
Okay. With that, we shall adjourn.
Yay! Rock and roll. Thanks for the pizza.
Of course.
There's some left over in there for somebody.
If you want to take it, go for it. Thank you all.
Was there a